You know what's so funny, right? These things called relationships are so fickle, so fragile. You could ignore one for so many years and it could be your longest lasting. You could give one so much attention in the beginning and it fades out so unexpectedly. But anyways, that is the nature of relationships. Hi everyone, welcome back to BTRD Behind the Red Door. I'm your host, Uncle Smuzi, known on all social media platforms as Uncle Smuzi. You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and yeah, please feel free to also investigate our other social media platforms for the podcast, which is SoundCloud and iHeartThis. I've just recently uploaded the second episode. This is the third, right? Today's discussion is relationship and boundaries, but as of the nature of this podcast, I always like to go through the associations of the color red. We've got sacrifice, we've got danger, we've got courage, we've got heat, we've got passion. We have activity, sexuality, anger, love, and joy. And today, I honestly feel like sacrifice, danger, and courage, love and joy are going to be the biggest associations that I'm going to speak about today. So I don't have quite a lot of talking points in terms of relationships and boundaries. I just want to kind of spread out how I tackle this particular topic. So for me, honestly, relationships could be friendships, could be romantic, could be platonic, could be purely professional, could be associations, could be acquaintances. It all depends on the degree of familiarity for me, and it always takes me to my first point. So my first talking point is, for me, I think the most crucial in any type of situation, identifying the nature of that particular relationship, so as to define what exactly it is to you and to the next person, right? So if it's romantic and you know that you want to pursue romantic intents or romantic relationship with that person, it is good to identify that in your mind, make it clear and known to the other person as to how you see the situation, so that you know that you're on the same page. You know, because sometimes it really helps to sit down and speak about certain things instead of shame. Kwababa saves lives, but also courage can help you in some situations, so that you don't find yourself walking into a brick wall. I'm currently having my morning tea. It's been a long night. Two, I feel it necessary to set the premise of how this relationship is going to work. So how are we going to nurture this relationship? If it's a friendship, are we people who communicate? I feel the need to over communicate, especially when I enter into new sorts of relationships, whether romantic, platonic, acquaintances, or whatever the case may be. I feel it very necessary to communicate how I like certain things to go, and for me that sets my rules of engagement. So how are we gonna go about this? What is it exactly that we are pursuing? Why are we pursuing it? And with whom am I actually pursuing this with? When did we notice that this started? I like making that little bit of a border wall, so that I know where this sits and I don't end up blurring the lines at a later stage. For me, then the next thing is assess what are the risks that you can honestly take with this particular relationship. What are the limits? Do you compromise? Would you find yourself going on a limb for someone who not necessarily, sometimes the nature of relationships isn't as important as the person that you're doing it for, because of how you structured your relationship. So this is why I feel like this order really, really works, because once you've set the premise and you know who you're doing it for, why you're doing it for, what it is exactly that you're doing, and when you're going to be doing it, then it's easy to assess the risks, the limits that you can actually exercise in this, and also look into aspects like, when is it okay to compromise in a friendship? or in a relationship or in an acquaintanceship or a professional degree, because sometimes when you don't set the record straight, when you don't have clear rules of engagement, it really becomes a very murky playground, because then anything goes. And I'm not about the go with the flow type of thing, because at the end of the day, it goes against my golden rule of interaction, which is that everyone is a human and you need to treat them with respect. Because once lines become murky, the day you decide to unmurk those lines, where do you leave the next person? That's why it's important to draw boundaries around any form of a relationship. For me, friendships in my regard, I've got friendships that have gone on for 12 years. My best friend and I have known each other for the past 9 years, going on to 10. My other best friend and I have known each other for 9 years, going on to 10. We met in different situations. We met in different cycles. I understand the premise of our relationships. I understand the risks that I can take and the limits that I can cross. I know how far we've gone. I know how far back we reach. I know what is to come next. Although I may not be able to predict the next day, but I understand that should such a situation arise, I believe that the nature of our relationship is strong enough to hold us together going forward. I know when it's safe and necessary to compromise. I know when it's safe to step out of line and say things the way that I feel things should be said. I know the type of things that I can discuss. I know the levels of TMI that I can go on about. And I know the type of conversations I can have with a friend, with a partner, with a work acquaintance, with a work associate or a life associate, or even with family, because all of these things take a different degree. And they take a different shape. And sometimes it's all about seeing the commonalities in between to say, okay, I respect these people. This is why I have this golden rule of interaction. Everyone is human. Treat them so and with respect. That is the one commonality that I have across all boards of relationships that I have in my life. So whether good or bad, I need to bring myself to the table and remember that I am dealing with someone who feels, someone who's got emotions, someone who's going to question why it is that I'm saying or doing these things, someone who has chosen me and made a sacrifice to maybe choose me as a better connect, as opposed to someone else who maybe at the time I didn't even know that that person was a particular option, right? They went on a limb and trusted me to say, okay, I can trust this person with a certain degree of my life and emotion and information and just how I operate. I can be myself to an extent around this particular person. They've grown to have an emotional attachment depending on the nature of the relationship, right? And that just makes it so. This is why I love it best when it is communicated, Uti. Okay, so this is the path that we're going to follow. This is where it starts. This is how wide it is. And this is honestly where we can go going forward. Because, look, the worst type of breakups that I've seen have been where people didn't know when lines were being crossed and weren't willing to go back to the table and revisit these talking points that I'm using. People didn't want to assess. People didn't want to just set a golden rule to say, I don't like when you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You cannot cross this particular line. Sometimes playing it safe is playing it best. Sometimes just going at it raw is fine. But nah, man. But anyways, I think we all have our own individual definitions of relationships, friendships, partnerships, acquaintanceships, associations, family. I don't know, strangers, how easily someone assimilates between all these social circles, because I have people who are friends but I consider family. I have people who are family but I consider more friends than people that I can actually keep close, because of the premise that I've set around our relationship, because of how I've identified our interactions and all of that. So it leaves me with the comfort of saying, I know how far I can go over there. I know the compromises, risks, and limits that I can exercise within that particular relationship. And it makes it so clear to me to know even if I can go overboard on a limb, just to test the waters and see if we can expand the territory that is this particular relationship. But yeah, I think one relationship that I really treasure to this day is the one that I have with my little sister, and the second would be with my best friend. Because these are two individuals who are so similar yet so far apart, and it's helped me kind of cross that bridge where at one point I was not a person who used to nurture relationships. I would just say, if it's dead, let it die. Let's spilt milk, like, just forget about it. Let it expire, But as I went on to realize, okay, so this is how you build up. As I'm speaking about this, all I can hear is in my head is, so this is love, so this is love. Because that is the song that I associate with relationships. In my head, it just, music plays, right? I've got about 3 minutes left to sum up this whole conversation. And I hope through this podcast, I'm really speaking to someone. Really speaking to someone who's sitting there and having those conversations and really asking themselves, what is the most important relationship that they hold dear in their life? I would honestly say that that relationship is a relationship with yourself that you definitely cannot compromise on. You definitely cannot sacrifice. You definitely cannot put that relationship in danger. You need to be brave enough. Take up the courage to make that relationship yours. Own it. Love yourself. Give yourself joy. Show yourself the level of passion that you are willing to give elsewhere as opposed to yourself. I think that's the best note that I can actually give in this particular episode. I don't ever think I have a moral of the story, but moral of the story here is understand the field that you're in. No one is an enemy. They're just someone you no longer fucks with. No one is a betrayer. They're just someone who crossed the boundary that you failed to explain or make known. No one is above you. You just haven't bridged that gap between the two of you to say, okay, so this is where you are, so this is where I am. How do I either get to where you are or assess yourself and feel, why is there a need for me to feel as though my relationship with that particular individual cannot prosper, grow, etc., etc. I may be going off on a tangent. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I feel as though if we were more invested in treating relationships like financial portfolios, really look at everything you do as an investment and understand the nature of investment that you are making, because majority of these are lifetime, but a minority of them are temporary, and you just need to understand what it is that you're going to learn from an individual along the way, what it is that you will, in all honesty, gain, not from a materialistic point of view, but just as a way of growing as a human being. Character development, I think, is the most important part of relationships. So learn to define your relationships, learn your boundaries. This has been Behind the Red Door, episode 3. We were talking relationships and boundaries with Uncle Smuzi. I am available on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok. You can find me at Uncle_Smuzi. And yeah, man, please show some love, rate us, and I will see you, or rather you will hear me in the next episode. Bye.